Okay. So I hope you're able to see my screen. We derived the final velocities of both the objects, right? We derived the final velocities of both the objects which underwent what type of collision? A head-on collision, correct? Now we will see what are all the special cases that are there in this case. So listen. So what is the value of V1? We'll first write down the formula. See, it is such a big formula where you have to remember also. So I'll tell you a method to remember. Listen. So for V1, something into U1 plus something into U2. Okay. Similarly, V2 also is like this one. Something into U1 plus something into U2. Okay. So that something is observed. Here it is M1 plus M2 in the denominator. Here also it is M1 plus M2. So put a line like this, write it as M1 plus M2. Here also put a line and write it as M1 plus M2. Okay. For the first scenario, that is similarly for V2 also it is M1 plus M2. And here also it is M1 plus M2. I hope it is clear till this step. So when you write V1, right? So for V1, here it will be M1 minus M2 and 2M2. It is like the difference of two masses and 2 times 1 mass. So you have to remember this one alone. For V1, it is 1 minus 2 and 2 M2. That is M1 minus M2 and here it will be 2 M2. Is that point clear? So for V2, it is exactly the reverse. So for V2, what will happen is it will be 2 M1 and this will be M2 minus M1. So that is the way you have to remember this expression, or else it becomes difficult. High possibility that you'll make mistake in the exam. The reason I'm saying you have to remember is because there might be questions which are based on special cases also. So depending on that particular scenario, you might have to apply this formula. So it is not practically possible for us to sit and derive also because it's a very big derivation. Right? If you're clear with this, I'll proceed. Shall I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Listen. See the particular cases. First, when masses of two bodies are equal, what is going to happen? Okay. When both the objects have same mass. So that is the first case. So I'll call it as particular case or special case. So what is it? When both objects have what?
Equal mass.
So same mass. So M1 will be equal to M2. Let us call it as M. I'm calling it as M. Right. When this is going to happen, our work is to substitute in the above expressions and find it out. So V1 is equal to, what will happen to M1 minus M2 into U1?
Cancel.
0.
0 U1 plus 2 times, in the place of M2, can I write it as M divided by, in the place of M1 plus M2, can I write it as 2M? Because M1 and M2 are nothing but M only, into U2. 2M and 2M will get cancelled. So V1 will be equal to U2. You're able to understand this? So V1 will be equal to U2. Similarly, V2 is what? Tell me, no? It is 2M divided by 2M.
It will be U1, sir.
Yes, very good. It will be 0 divided by. So which implies V2 is equal to U1. What is the meaning of this? V1 is the final velocity of which object?
First object.
First object. and u2 is the initial velocity of the second object. Okay. Similarly, here v2 is the final velocity of the second object, u1 is the initial velocity of the first object. So under a scenario where both the objects have same mass, irrespective of their initial velocities, can I say that their velocities get exchanged? You're able to understand this? Their velocity is getting exchanged. The meaning of this is, let's say there is a 2 kilogram block which is moving with a speed of 10 meter per second. There is another 2 kilogram block or a ball which is moving with the speed, let's say 5 meter per second. So what is 10 meter per second? This is u1 and this is u2. After collision, what will happen? First of all, here will the collision take place? I'm changing it to 15. Will the collision take place?
No, sir.
Why?
Because U1 is smaller than U2.
Yes, u2 has to be less. So if I take it as phi, yes, collision will take place. So if I call this as before collision, now my question is, do we need to sit and calculate? Do we need to apply that big formula again? Directly you can say, what? If I ask you the velocities, what will you say? The 2 kilo,
V1
the
is
first,
5 meters.
so this will start moving with 5 meter per second and this will start moving with 10 meter per
10
second.
meter per.
Hasn't there been an exchange of velocity that has taken place?
Yes, sir.
Irrespective of whether it is 10 meter, if I take it as 20, is it going to make any difference? No, right? So one point is clear to us, that in what kind of a collision? In a perfectly elastic collision. Okay, it is not in all scenarios. In a perfectly elastic one-dimensional collision, if both the objects which are undergoing what collision? Head-on collision, are having the same mass, irrespective of their velocities, the final velocities get exchanged. Exchanged with whom? Exchanged with the initial velocities of the objects. Are you able to understand? So when they ask you in MCQ, so there are two ways in which questions can be framed. So if they want to ask a subjective question, what they will do is they will ask the question as I told yesterday. Where did I write? Here. If they want it as a subjective question, they will say it, they'll ask the question as derive expression for final velocities. But if they want to test the same thing in an MCQ, what they will do is they will give you this kind of a scenario and give you different options. So when they give this, you need not sit and calculate anything. You know the concept, you can directly apply it. I hope it is clear.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please make a note of it. Shall I move on to the next one then?
Yes, sir.
Second one is when the target D is initially at rest. That is which mass? So there is another term also that is used. The first particle which is going is called as a projectile. The particle which is experiencing the collision is sometimes called as a target. So when target is initially at rest means M2 is at rest. So U2 will be 0. Correct? Now I am applying the formula again. V1 is equal to M1 minus M2 divided by M1 plus M2 into U1 plus 2M2 divided by M1 plus M2 into U2. So what will happen? This thing is gone, 0. So what will be the value of V1? It will be M1 minus M2 by M1 plus M2 into U1. Okay. Similarly, what will be the value of V2, guys? Tell me directly. 2
2m1 by m1 plus m2, sir. Into
m1
u1.
plus m2. Very good. Into. So this is what is going to happen. Is that clear? 2m1 divided by m1 plus m2 into u1. Okay. So moving on to the next concept. The second one is when target B is at target B at rest. So target B is at rest and also it is very heavy. So let's take target B at rest and very heavy. Okay. So the meaning of very heavy in physics is M2 is very much greater than M1. You use double greater than symbol. So you read it like M2 is very much greater than M1. If it is like this, M2, you will read it as M2 is greater than M1. Here you will read it as M2 is very much greater than M1. When that is the scenario, what we can do is M2 minus M1 can be approximated to M2. And M1 by M2 can be approximated to 0. So these are the two approximations that we are going to do. Okay. So keeping this factor in mind, what will be the value of V1? V1 is equal to M1 minus M2 divided by M1 plus M2 into U1. So that's what we got from the previous scenario when we took B to be at rest. But here one more additional factor is coming. It is heavy also. When that is happening, what are we supposed to do? I need to get the format M1 by M2. If I need to get the format M1 by M2 in this.
M2 divided by M1 plus M2.
So divide the numerator and denominator with
M1.
yes. Not M1, M2. M1 by M2 minus 1 divided by M1 by M2 plus 1. The whole thing multiplied with U1. What is M1 by M2? It is 0. Here also it is 0. What will happen? V1 will be equal to minus U1. So what is the meaning of this term? So V1 is equal to minus U1. What are you able to understand? V1 is the final velocity of first object.
Direction.
So it will rebound with the same velocity. That is what happens when you throw a ball at a wall. When you throw a ball towards a wall, it hits the ball, and if it is a perfectly elastic collision, it should rebound with the same velocity. But it is actually not a perfectly elastic collision because you are able to hear sound. There is loss of energy. So you're able to understand this. So V1 will be equal to minus U1. Then what about V2? V2? V2 will be, it is 2m1 divided by m1 plus m2 into u1. I wrote it from here, from the previous scenario. What are we supposed to do? Divide the numerator and denominator with m2, m1 by m2 plus 1, the whole multiplied with u1. So m1 by m2 is 0. So 0 is the answer. So the final velocity is 0. So what is the meaning of this? The heavier object is still going to continue to be at rest. Obviously, right? When you throw a ball towards the wall is still at its same place. Only the ball is getting rebounded. So this is what happens. I hope you're able to relate it to the real-time scenario as well.
Sir, M1 is only the object with low
M1
weight.
is the
M1 is the
M1 is
object
the-
with low weight, no, sir.
yes, M1 is the object which is thrown, or
Then we should
M1.
divide by M1 only, no, sir. Then why, sir, M2?
Hey, I'm trying to mathematically derive. What did I write here? M1 by M2 is approximately 0. No? Then what will M2 by M1 be? It will be infinity.
Okay, sir.
So you have to take this scenario. Right? So what is the third scenario? Let's see. Wait, let's see the next scenario. What is the next scenario? When target is at rest and is of negligible mass. What do you mean by negligible mass? Its mass is very small compared to and is of okay. So a target B is at rest and is of negligible mass. Then can I write M2 is very much less than M1? Then what will happen? The difference of M1 and M2 will be approximately M1. So one more point I would like to add, it is not only difference, it is sum also. Okay, M1 minus M2 is approximately how much? M1. Seriya? So what is V1 guys? V1 is same formula again, U2 is at rest, remember. So I'm going to take V1 is equal to M1 minus M2 by M1 plus M2 into U1. So what are the approximations that can happen? M1 minus M2 is approximated to how much?
M1.
M1. M1 plus M2 is also approximated to
M1.
U1. So this will be U1. Then what about V2? V2 is 2M1 divided by M1 plus M2 into U1. So it is 2 M1 divided by M1 plus M2 is also approximately M1 into U1. This and this will get cancelled. We'll get 2 times U1. So what is the meaning of this? Initially, what was the velocity with which the first object was moving? It is U1. Right? The first object was moving with the velocity of U1. After collision, what is the velocity with which the first object is moving? It is still U1, meaning in this scenario, what is happening? The heavier object is continuing to move with the same speed. Whereas, what will happen to the second object?
Its speed will be double the initial
Yes,
speed.
the second object was initially at rest, means it will attain double the speed as that was possessed by the first object. Okay, it will attain double the speed. That is what is going to happen. Means if you have, let's say there is a rock. Let's say there is a basketball and there is a tennis ball. So if this, let's say the tennis ball is at rest. The basketball is traveling with a speed of 10 meters per second. What will happen in this scenario? After collision, the basketball will still move with a speed of 10 meters per second. What will happen to the tennis ball?
Be
It
20
will move
meters per
20
second.
meter per second.
It will move with 20 meters. See, though basketball and the tennis ball are not the apt examples, I've taken only in terms of size consideration. Okay, instead of basketball, you can think of a shot put ball, the one which is made of. It is heavier, right? So if that kind of a scenario occurs, then this will be the output. So I hope you are able to visualize and connect, right? You're able to understand why that formula is there and how we are going to use it and what kind of problems will be asked. I hope all these things are clear. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now what I'm going to do is I'll give you little basic idea about inelastic collision also. So what do we mean by inelastic collision? We have already discussed. In inelastic collision, what happens? Linear momentum is conserved, but what is lost? Kinetic energy. The kinetic energy is lost. Okay. When this is happening, then what is this formula? V1 minus V2 divided V2 minus V1 divided by U1 minus U2. What is this? I told you yesterday. This is called as coefficient of substitution. So if E is equal to 1, it is perfectly, there is nothing like perfectly elastic collision. When you say elastic itself, it is understood it is perfect. E is less than 1, it will be inelastic collision. When E is equal to 0, this type of a collision is called as perfectly inelastic collision. Okay, now listen. This inelastic collision, at least for CBSE, you will not have anything much to discuss. But for perfectly inelastic collision, observe. When do you say two objects have undergone perfectly inelastic collision is? So this is a collision in which what happens? The objects travel together as a single object after collision, meaning they get stuck to each other. Let's say I have a clay of red color. Okay, I have clay of red color, and let's say you have clay of blue color. Let's say both the clays are projected in the same direction. Okay, let's say they have been projected in the same direction with U1 and U2. Obviously, for the collision to occur, U1 should be greater than U2. And we know that clay has the tendency to get stuck, right? So, let's say there will be one particular scenario where the red color clay and the blue color clay are coming in contact with each other. This is during collision. So I'm putting my point here. If I say clay has the tendency to get attracted, means it can attract other things. Okay. Then how will these two clays move after collision?
Together.
They get stuck and they move with the same velocity. And this velocity is what is called as common velocity. So initially what happened? Initially they both had different velocities, but after collision, they got stuck to each other such that they are moving with a common velocity. And problems based on inelastic collision are very simple to solve. Let's say the mass of the first clay is M1 and the mass of second clay is M2. Here M1 and M2, assuming there is no loss of mass, that is, mass is conserved. In the case of inelastic collision, what did I say is conserved? Linear momentum. So when linear momentum is conserved, can I write the initial momentum of the system is equal to how will you write the final velocity of the system? Sorry, final momentum of the system. It will be M1 plus M2 into V. So V will be equal to M1 U1 plus M2 U2 divided by M1 plus M2. You can either remember it as a formula, or since it is only one step, you can derive it in the exam also. Okay. So this is going to be the value of the common velocity attained by objects which are undergoing what type of collision? Perfectly inelastic collision. Okay. So this will be the common velocity. Are you guys able to understand this?
So this velocity is only for inelastic collisions, sir.
Perfectly inelastic, not inelastic also. It is so. What I defined here is called as perfectly inelastic. Don't forget the word perfectly. And why I told perfectly inelastic collision has E is equal to 0 is because what is the velocity of the second object and the first object after they undergo collision? They are attaining what velocity? A common velocity. So if V2 is equal to V1, then V2 minus V1 will be,
0.
that is the reason why I wrote E is equal to 0. I hope you are able to relate all this. Right? So this is perfectly inelastic collision. Make a note of it.
So if a question is asked, means you have to first find the value of t and then execute the formula, sir.
You have to find what?
Sir, if a question is asked about collision, so you have to first find the value of t and then execute this formula, sir. Suppose if it is perfectly in
No. The question itself you will understand. They will not say question in the question itself. They undergo perfectly inelastic collision. They'll put the question like this: there is an object of mass m1 which is moving with this speed. M2 is moving with this speed. After collision, they move together as a single object. Find the common velocity.
sir, then
So you should understand it.
where should we find
Then
that
apply this.
coefficient of restitution, sir?
No need. Coefficient of restitution will not be asked always. See, mostly it is for CBSE purpose. At least they ask only the definition. Maybe this question can come as what? Maybe this question can come as an MCQ. They can ask what is the coefficient of restitution of perfectly inelastic collision? 0, 1, greater than 1, less than 1. Option 0. What is the coefficient of restitution of perfectly elastic collision? Find it. Or they can put the question like this. If you ask me, I'll frame a question like this. The coefficient of restitution of a particular collision is 0.3. What type of a collision is it? Elastic, inelastic, perfectly inelastic, none of the above. What is the answer?
Inelastic.
Inelastic. So I'm just trying to teach in the reverse process because I'm not sure how MCQs are framed by your teachers, right? So, but these are all the ways we can frame questions to check your understanding. So I hope it is clear, right, till now?
Sir, what type of collision when E is greater than 1?
There is no type. When V is greater than 1 means how is it possible? The relative velocity of separation, how is it going to be greater than 1? Try to understand one thing. To answer your question, okay, since you have asked, I'll explain it in a different way. V2 minus V1 is going to be the velocities which are finally attained. Okay, U1 minus U2 is going to be the relative velocity of separation before they collided. That is why we call it as relative velocity of approach. So this E being less than 1 is also trying to speak something about efficiency. If E has to be greater than 1, then what should have happened is, after collision, the object should have, the system should have gained energy, which is not possible. Okay, so I'm trying to answer it completely theoretically. In this whole world, there is no possibility there where the efficiency can be greater than 100. Attaining 100 itself is an ideal situation. Okay. So that's why this does not work. Only these three scenarios are possible. Next.
Okay.
Since I spoke about efficiency now, we have seen what is work, we have seen what is energy. So concept that is left out is power. Okay, let's try to understand what exactly does power mean. Can someone try? So power is defined as the rate of doing work. Write it down. Okay. So rate of doing work, what is it? So this is what we call it as power. So what do you mean by rate, guys? Power is represented by the symbol P. So how do you define power as? It is the amount of work done per unit time. So that's what we mean by rate, no? It is work done by time, or you can write power as dW divided by dt. What is the difference between the first one and the second one? Both are powers only because the definition says rate of doing work. So rate means with respect to time. What is with respect to time? Work with respect to time. That's why I wrote W by T. But my question is, what is the difference between the first one and the second one? And why am I using different notations?
So in the first one, it's over a gradual period, while in the second one, it's at an instant, in a very small amount of time.
Very good. Very good. So that is why we call this as average power. Very good. This is called as average power and this is called as instantaneous power. Okay. The concept of instantaneous power, we generally don't use it as of now unless you have the work itself as a variable with respect to time. We will be concerned only with the average value. So average power is defined as the amount of the total work done divided by the total time it takes. Is that clear? So can I write it like this? Average power is equal to, I'm saying work done is force into displacement into cos theta, the whole divided by t. Okay. So force into, what is the displacement by time called as?
Velocity.
Velocity into cos theta. So we can write power as the dot product of force and velocity. You're able to understand this. So power has two formulae. You can either use work done per unit time, or it is also called as the dot product of the force and velocity. Okay. Now, the next question is it a scalar quantity or a vector quantity?
Vector.
How is it vector? What kind of a product are you doing?
Scalar, sorry.
Yes. Power is a scalar quantity. So there are two logics to answer this question. One is you're doing dot product. Dot product is a scalar output. Second is you're trying to divide work with time. Work is a scalar quantity. So scalar divided by scalar is also going to be a scalar quantity. So power is a scalar quantity, accepted. The next question is, what is going to be the SI unit of it?
Kilogram meter per second.
So it is joule. Work done is in joule divided by time is measured in second. This joule per second is called as watt. That is W. You would have heard this, right? Last year also you would have learned the commercial unit of energy when you learned about the units and all those concepts, kilowatt hour. Right? SI unit of work done is watt. So what is again the name of a scientist So that's why we are writing it as capital W. Am I clear? So this is one thing. So that's it. Yeah. Nothing much to speak about this. 1 minute. I'm just seeing if I missed something. So collisions we have completed, right? I'll suggest you one thing. Don't read the derivation from textbook. They've used unwanted symbols V2F. V2F means final velocity of second object, like that and all. Don't do that. You will get confused. So collision they are completed. Yes. In the power, yes. Just wanted to see this. So I've told you what is F dot P. Similarly, there is another unit of power which is called as horsepower, where 1 horsepower is equal to 746 watt. This horsepower concept is used for machines, or we can say this car and bikes, everything. The engine power is measured in terms of horsepower only. 1 horsepower is 746 watt. Okay, and the last thing that you're supposed to know is the commercial unit of energy. So what is the commercial unit of energy? It is measured in terms of kilowatt hour. So here I'm using the word energy. It has nothing to do with power. With this, power concept is over. So just since it is given in the textbook, I'm explaining it. You have heard this word or not? Yes or no? You know what is 1 kilowatt hour, right? For example, you keep paying your electricity bills 2 months once. You get electricity bill. When you see the bill, they will say, let's say, for example, 100 units. If it is coming like this, what does this unit mean? Have you heard this word? Your parents speaking. They say we had these many units of consumption of electricity. So what is the unit they are actually referring to?
Kilowatt.
They are referring it to kilowatt hour. Okay. So 1 kilowatt hour is how many joules? 1 kilowatt hour is 1 into kilo is 10 power 3. Watt is 1 only. 1 hour is how many seconds?
60.
3600 seconds. So 3.6 into 10 power 3 into 10 power 3 joule is what is 1 kilowatt hour. That is 3.6 into 10 power 6 joule. That is a conversion that they have given here. Simple problems you can try. This I don't want to waste time in explaining. Okay, you can try out this problem on your own. Similarly, the other examples also you can try on your own. So this is all about work, energy, and power. And as I told you previously, there is one concept which is given in the form of a problem, which is called the vertical circular motion. Okay. So this point alone I will explain. Is there any other doubt from other topics?
No, sir.
Listen. So mark this as important and let's try to solve this also. So you know what is a bob, right? So there is a bob of mass m that is suspended by a light string of length L. It is imparted a horizontal velocity of v naught at which point? At the lowest point A, such that it completes a semicircular trajectory in a vertical plane with a string becoming slack. Okay. So the meaning of slack is it becomes loose. The meaning of slack is it becomes loose, and loose means mathematically tension is 0. So it becomes slack only on reaching the topmost point C. So this is shown. Obtain the expression for the velocity at the bottom, the speeds at the point B and C, and the ratio of kinetic energy at B and C. Comment on the nature of the trajectory of the bob after it reaches the point C. Okay, read this question again. I'll explain what it means. So I hope you all read it. See, I switched on my camera. I hope you're able to see, right? You're able to see me?
Yes.
You're able to see this, right? I have headphones in my hand. So what I'm doing is, this is the bob. Okay? This is the bob they're trying to speak about. Now what I'm going to do is, I'll hold it here and I will put it in a motion like this. So if I do it, from the top if I see, what is it we will be able to see? From the top if you see,
Uniform circular motion.
it is moving in a circular path, right? You're able to
Yes,
understand
sir.
that? You can also do this and see, it is moving in a circular path. When I put the bob down, okay, the bob is hanging, I'm holding it at some point, I'm just giving it a velocity. If I put it, I need not take any effort, it is still rotating in a circular path. So this type of a circular motion is called as a horizontal circular motion because this is horizontal plane. But what is the question about? There is an object like this, there is a bob which is getting suspended. What they're trying to say is, when it is getting suspended like this, I'll bring it close, they're giving a velocity v0 at this point. You're able to see what is happening to it. It is going like this and it is trying to take a turn. So I'm repeating it, see. If I give a velocity like this, it is going like this and trying to take a turn. It will keep rotating in this way. So what I will do is, I'll put it in this kind of a motion. You're able to see. So when you see it from this side, how do you see this block is moving? I mean the bob is moving.
Vertically.
It is actually moving in a vertical plane. So that is why this kind of a motion is called as a vertical circular motion because it is moving in a vertical plane. Are you guys able to visualize this? Now what is our work according to the question is, initially the bob was like this. You give a velocity to it. See, I'm going to give a velocity like this. Did you see what happened? I gave velocity. Was it able to complete a semicircular track? It is actually oscillating. Right? Means what is the meaning of this? Means I didn't give it sufficient velocity such that it is able to overcome the gravitational pull and come to this point. If you read the question again, they would have mentioned one point. It is given a velocity in such a way that it is able to complete a semicircular track. And what is happening at different points? This point is A, this point is B, and this point is C. At all these points, what exactly is happening? The velocity is given in such a way that it is able to reach here. When it is able to reach here, at this point, it will have velocity in this direction. So it will be able to complete a turn and then come back again. Okay. So that velocity is what is called as minimum velocity. Actually, as I told you, it is a concept. Okay, before I go to the paper, tell me what are all the forces acting on this? String, bob.
Tension
So
is
what are
there,
the forces?
sir.
Huh?
Tension is there.
Tension. At the lowest point, tension is in the upward direction. So remember, tension will always act towards the center. This is the center according to the vertical circular motion. Tension is like this. What is happening in the downward direction? This has mass. mg is in the downward
Mg
direction.
downward.
It has velocity in this direction. Right? And velocity and tension are perpendicular to each other. It is trying to take a turn. So this is at point A, guys. At point A, I'm repeating it. What are all the forces acting? Tension, mg, velocity in this direction. At this point,
G, tension, and even velocity.
mg is like this, velocity is like this in this direction, and tension is towards the center. I hope you're able to visualize. Similarly, when it comes to the highest point, at this point, mg is downwards, tension is towards the center, velocity is in this direction. I hope you're able to visualize it, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So one important point to be kept in your mind is, though at all the 3 points the same string is acting, the tension at all the points are not the same. Okay. So keeping all these factors in mind, we are going to draw a free body diagram for it. So that is a diagram they have given. So mg is acting downwards. Observe, mg is acting downwards, and tension at point A is acting upwards, and velocity is in the perpendicular direction. So in this particular sum, we are going to have 6 equations. So 3 equations based on Newton's laws and 3 equations based on energy conservation theorem. So observe the way I'm going to write. At point A, if I apply Newton's second law, what can I speak about the force? So one more important point, it is in circular motion. For any object to be in circular motion, necessary forces. What is the necessary force for any object to be in circular motion? I've told this many times.
Centripetal force.
It is a centripetal force, and the centripetal force will always act towards the center. So what will be, if I draw a free body diagram at point A, tension at point A is upwards, mg is downwards, and velocity is in this direction. So what will be the value of the centripetal force that is acting towards the center? This is the center point O. It will be m into v naught square divided by, what is the radius, guys? Fast.
L.
It is the length of the string itself. Clear? So when I apply Newton's second law, tell me which side is the acceleration taking place, upward or downward?
Downward.
At point A, this is the free body diagram at point A. This is the acceleration. It is acting towards the center. No, the object, any object in circular motion, uniform circular motion, will always have the acceleration towards the center. Please have this in your mind. When that is the case, what is the equation I need to frame? The difference of both the forces TA and mg will be equal to m into v naught square divided by L. Accepted?
Yes, sir.
Okay. If I apply energy, if I try to calculate the total energy at point A, what will I get? So total energy at point A, when I say total energy, I need mechanical energy, that is the kinetic energy and the potential energy. So I'm taking the bottommost point as the reference line. If I take that as a reference line, what are all the energies the object possesses? It will be, I can write potential energy at A plus kinetic energy at A. What is the potential energy at A? That is taken as a reference line. That's
Zero.
very simple. It is 0. So what is the only energy it possesses?
Kinetic energy.
So what is the value of it?
Half
Half
m
into
v naught square.
Very good. It is half m v naught square. This is 1 and this is 2. Because you need to write the velocity at that particular point. Correct? Huh? Similarly, when it is going to point B, at point B, how is it? It is horizontal. So when it is horizontal, the bob is like this. Mg will act in downward direction, left, right, up. Which direction?
Downward.
Downwards.
Vertically downwards. So Mg is downwards. This side, what will act?
Tension.
There will be, very good. There will be tension, and there is also centripetal force acting towards the center. And what is the value of it? M into V B square divided by, what is the radius?
L.
Very good. So where VB is the velocity. So I don't want to include VB in the diagram. So I'll write it in the side. It is VB. So tell me the equation. Here, which force is providing the necessary centripetal force? So centripetal force is in the leftward direction horizontally. Right? So what is the only force that is acting towards the center?
Tension.
That's it. Tension at point B is equal to m into VB square divided by L. So this is when you apply Newton's second law of motion. Similarly, if you calculate the total energy at point B, what will it be? That is the potential energy at B plus kinetic energy at B. So for potential energy at B, with respect to the reference line, how high is the object?
L.
L. So what will be the potential energy at point B? That will be mg into height plus what is the kinetic energy at point B? Half.
Half
mvb square.
Very good, guys. So half mvb square, which will be 4. So how many equations we got? We got 4 equations. So the next equation that we are going to get is at point C. So at point C means it is highest point, something towards the center, right? Highest point towards the center. What are all the forces acting downwards? mg and the tension at point C. Velocity will be in the leftward direction. What is the direction of centripetal force? It is also downwards. And what is the value of it? M into, by now you should have got it. M into centripetal
vc
force is
square by L.
very good, very good. It is Vc square divided by what?
L.
Perfect. It is Vc square divided by L. So how do I write the equation of Newton's law? So what are all the forces acting in the direction of centripetal force?
mg and tension.
So mg plus Tc is equal to m into Vc square divided by L. So this will be equation number 5. Accepted? But I'll not
Yes,
take
sir.
this as 5. I'll tell you. Okay. If I calculate the total energy at C, it will be potential energy at C plus kinetic energy at C. So what is the potential energy at C? With respect to the reference line, how high is the object?
Well,
It's
mg
diameter. It's diameter, no? So it is mg into 2L plus half into m into, what is the velocity at C? It is Vc. So Vc square. So let this be equation number 6. The reason why I didn't write the above equation as 5 is because I wanted to concentrate on one important point. What did they say is happening at point C? It is becoming slack in the sense tension at point C is 0. So tension at C is 0 means if I take Tc as 0 here, then mg will be equal to m into Vc square divided by L. Accepted? So this I take it as 5, m and m, this also I'll not take it as 5. So m and m will get cancelled, which implies Vc square is equal to g into L. Then what is the value of Vc, guys? It's root of gl. This will be the 5th equation. But what is it we need to find? We need to find V naught. After you find V naught, we need to find the ratio of kinetic energies at point B and point C. Conceptually, is there any doubt?
No, sir.
So it's fine, right? So remember, since object is moving under influence of whom? Gravity, because it is vertical circular motion. Vertical, always gravitational force is the controlling factor. Gravity, that is a conservative force. What can we say? energy is conserved. Got it? So when I say energy is conserved, then the total energy at A will be equal to total energy at B will be equal to the total energy at C. So what is the total energy at A? Where is it? Half mv0 square. What is the total energy at B? mgl plus half mvb square. And what is the total energy at C? mg into 2l plus half m into, in the place of bc square, what can I write? In the place of bc square,
Root
what can I
GL.
write?
GL.
Vc is root gl. Vc square is only gl. Since vc square is equal to g into l. So what I will do is, I will equate the first and the last. So half mv0 square is equal to mg into 2l is 2mgl plus mgl divided by 2, which will be 5 by 2 times mgl. So what will get cancelled? M and m is gone. 2 and 2 is gone. What will be the value of v0? So this should be the velocity that should be given at the bottom for it to complete the semicircular track. You're able to understand this, guys? Similarly, they ask what is kb divided by kc. Kb is half m vb square divided by half m vc square. Half and half gone, m and m gone. So we need vb square by vc square. Vc square is gl. So our work is to find vb square. How will you find? You yourself tell me, logic. So for finding vb square, we can equate these two. That is half m v0 square is equal to mgl plus half m vb square. M is cancelled. So half into what is v0 square? It is 5gl is equal to gl plus vb square by 2. So what will you get? 5gl by 2 minus gl is equal to vb square by 2. So this will be 3 by 2 times gl is equal to vb square by 2. 2 and 2 will get cancelled. vb will be root of 3gl. Now will you be able to find it out? So vb, take it and substitute it here. vb square is 3gl, vc square is gl. What is the answer? 3:1. Okay. I'm sorry for the calculation parts. I had to be very fast because I've explained the theory. Okay. Mathematical part, you have to work on it. This is all about the question. I hope by now you would have understood there are certain topics in this chapter which needs a lot of practice. Okay, so practice them well. 1 minute. So if you observe, kb divided by kc is 3:1, vb is root 3gl, and where is v0? vc is root gl, and v0 is root 5gl. That's what we have derived. You can follow the method which I explained. Is there any conceptual doubt?
No, sir.
Okay. So since you don't have time to copy, I'll share this document. Don't worry, you can make a note of it. Okay. So that's it from my side. So 1 minute, wait for a minute.